Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Where is the cat? Hello. Oh, here is the kitty.
Yeah, she likes to play a lot, so I took her in my room because my girlfriend is sleeping right now. So I give her a break, but cat is like to play a lot. So she running around and destroying like cats scratching post and hiding in the like background. So like you're actually like good at guessing like a cat by noise.
Is it British
but-
short hair?
No, it's like I would call this breed street cat, Ukrainian street cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, by color, I expect there is some breed mix in the process because she like single color. But yeah, she's from a street. A rescue kitty. I also noticed Lee is not an agenda for today working group.
Yes, that's right. Lee's asked me to run tonight's meeting, and on that topic, I think we have settled down. So, yes, hello everyone. Welcome to my word, starting well. Welcome to this GraphQL working group meeting. Thanks for coming. By joining the meeting, you will have already agreed to the specification membership agreement, to the participation guidelines, the contribution guide, and the code of conduct, all of which are linked in the agenda. Let's do our usual round of introductions. So I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Benji.
Hi, everyone. Rob.
I didn't get your audio there, Stefano.
Hello, I'm Roman, Microsoft.
Hey, I'm Alex, Matt Prono AI.
Correct, now should be better. Hi, Stefano.
Hi, my name is Ivan, and I forgot to add myself into agenda. I will do it during the call. Submit a PR.
Perfect. Thanks, Ivan. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I wonder if we'll have a few more people drop in half an hour at the normal meeting time. But as for now, that's everyone who has added themselves to the agenda. Speaking of, there is 2 more meetings this month coming up. They're called secondary meetings. There's one which is on Wednesday, and that is going to be in the afternoon Pacific time, which makes it the morning in the Asia Pacific time zones. And there is one on the, I believe, the 20th, which will be the same times as this meeting. So if we do happen to run over, we can always push some items into those. Is anyone able to take notes for us today? Any volunteers?
Sorry, guys, English is not my first language. I'm really not good at this.
That's fair enough.
Same here for me.
Hopefully the subtitles on the video will suffice today. Okay,
I'll do it. I can do it for like the first half an hour at least. I'm gonna leave part of the way through, but I can start at least.
Really helpful. Thanks, Alex. Okay, next up is reviewing the agenda. So I see on the agenda, which I will just refresh. I'm going to see if there's any pending pull requests, which there are not. And we're reviewing the previous meeting's action items like we do every month. We'll be discussing the defer and stream stuff, which Rob is here for, and then Alex will be giving us an update on client-controlled nullability. By the looks of it, it could be quite a short meeting. Does anyone have any other topics that they would like to add to this meeting? No? Fantastic. All right. Well, let's have a look at the action items. I notice that none are marked ready for review. Does anyone have an action item that they think is ready to be marked as done? Just having a scan over them myself. No, okay, I think we should move on then, in which case I'll hand over to you, Rob.
Yeah, so I have a few things that I want to discuss. First off, spec PR is open. It's up to date with all of our discussions so far. Still encourage everyone to review it. I believe that I've addressed all the comments that were left there up until now, but let me know if that's not the case. The next thing is subscriptions with defer and stream. I'm going to share my screen. The reference implementation right now and the spec PR does have support for subscriptions with defer and stream, but I do think that there's a lot of details that would benefit from some deep dive discussions. And just, I think in the interest of moving the rest of defer and stream forward more quickly, I'm proposing that we drop support for defer and stream for this spec proposal, and then it could be revisited later. I do think that one thing that's important is allowing shared fragments between queries and subscriptions and mutations. So especially with Relay, it's very common. You co-locate your fragments with your components. They include a lot of other fragments. You may have a defer somewhere. I don't think it should just be a validation error if one of these fragments is included in a subscription operation. So instead, I think that we should allow it if that defer is disabled with the if argument. So that would mean that we can't use a validation error because we don't have access to variables during the validation stage. So I proposed raising a field error if you encounter a defer or stream that is not disabled with its if argument during execution. I have PRs for that for GraphQL JS, and I have a change ready to go in the spec PR if you all agree. I've had this discussion open for a while, and I pinged a couple people about it, and I haven't heard any dissent, basically. So I want to bring it up again here and see if there's any other thoughts or if I should move forward with this.
Just to clarify, by problem with subscription, do you mean like discussion that I opened, or there is also other like active discussion or disagreement about subscription?
The way that I had it implemented is that each deferred or stream payload for a subscription event would have to come before the next event. And I think that is somewhat controversial. I think that's related to the one that you raised, which I wouldn't share.
So before we go into detail about like my topic, I just wanted in general to understand, is it the only problem we know right now, or is there is like other issues with subscription?
I mean, I've also heard some feedback about like exactly if I guess I feel like they're all kind of related. It's like, should they be multiplexed? Should there be additional fields for handling multiplexing? And I also don't think that we've spent a lot of time discussing it. So I'm sure there will be more, and I think that this is a pretty big issue. So I don't know if like, I wouldn't say this is the only one, but I think that all of the feedback I've heard is kind of interrelated with each other, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I understand. So it's about delivering, because subscription is multi-payload by itself, and stream
Exactly,
defer
yeah.
is multi-payload by itself. So a question how we handle it to stream inside the stream. Okay, now it's more clear what the problem is.
Yeah, I definitely think it's solvable. And if I thought that this was just like a small thing that in like 1 or 2 meetings we could work through, I would move forward with it. But I think it has a potential to like, and I think it deserves like really focused thought on how the best way to do it is. So that's why I'm proposing not including it.
Okay, in initial not included it through, like, do you feel like somebody else should champion it?
Maybe. It would probably, I think it would probably make sense not to start championing it until like the rest of it has landed. But I mean, I'm open to seeing it through after the rest of this is done, or if somebody else wants to champion it, I'm happy to help them with that too.
So idea is to ship it in like, so it's not temporary measure. Idea is that to like remove it from initial proposal, make this validation rules that you suggested, and like the whole package, like the whole spec PR when we measure it, will be without subscription, but and with specific validation rule. I'm like, I'm basically trust you if you think so. I think subscription can be solved, but if you think it's it will create cascading discussion and disagreement, yeah, maybe it should be discussed like separately.
Yeah, and I don't want the rest of defer and stream, which I think we've made a lot of progress on, and we're all feeling like it's getting closer. I wouldn't want that to be held up by that cascading discussion, or that it not get the attention that it deserves because we're more focused on the bigger picture.
My main concern with this, which I think I've already shared with you, is I don't like the idea of just sort of throwing an error in this situation at runtime. It feels like a validation rule would be cleaner, but it's not, it's not possible for us to do that in the way that validation is set up, because you can't depend on variables to do that. There have been discussions in the past about having like a second phase of validation that validates once the variables are known. But nonetheless, your point about sharing the fragments is a very solid one. I was just looking at the types of the directives, and I think it may have been me that raised before that the ifs should be non-nullable, which they are now with a default. But I was actually wondering whether if we made them nullable again and removed the default, we could actually change kind of the behavior. So if you @stream something on a query or a mutation, then it would stream by default. But if you @stream on a subscription, it would not, or something like that. But I'm not sure that that really fixes the issue. You still have to handle if someone says if true with a variable or something like that. So yeah, I'm uncomfortable with this solution, but I think it's the only one. If we don't want stream and defer to work on subscriptions for now, and we want to support fragments, then I think it's the only option. I'm just really, I find it a little bit distasteful to be throwing an error like that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do hope that it is temporary and that we do see defer and stream through with subscriptions eventually and remove it. What I would about changing the removing the defaults and having different behavior for stream for a subscription and query. I think that runs into the issue then of when we do enable it, it would be a breaking change if we reverse that behavior. And also has the potential to just be confusing of different defaults in different scenarios.
I have like idea. I have it just now, so maybe I didn't give it a lot of thought. But so like behavior that we have right now in SpecPR, one that we already have in the text, is pretty conservative. So it's the stuff that anyone can support. It's just like people have problem like with performance and optimization. It's preventing performance and optimization and stuff. What if we leave everything as is and just add a note that in future we can like clients should not be dependent on stuff being delivered sequentially, like of like entire stream and defer payload to be delivered before next event. And in future version, we can discuss if it's possible to enable, if it's worth to enable. Just keep it the most conservative and add like a note that you should not depend on this behavior.
I'm not sure how that would be able to be supported by the client, though. If they don't know how that behavior is going to work in the future, then their queries that they're writing now that work with the payloads they're getting now may not work in future when we change that behavior that we've told them we're going to change, but we haven't told them what we're going to change it to. I mean, for example, if you do like a subscription payload and then all of the stream and defer payloads, subsequent payloads that come after that, and then you do the next subscription payload, it's fine. But if you do this multiplexing, there has to be something that ties a particular stream or defer to a particular subscription payload, and we don't have a spec for that yet. So telling people they need to handle that when we haven't told them how, I don't think is viable.
Yeah.
What if we just say, at least with the defer, what if we just say, if you don't support, we say that it's optional to support. So at least for defer, we can say you should, the server can just ignore it if it doesn't support it, not throw error, oh, I don't support this, but ignore. And that brings me to my other question. We kind of skipped the first item SpecPR discussion. And I think I raised it before. The instruction, if there is defer, then the payload should be deferred. I believe I was suggesting to make it, it can be deferred. So basically, kind of defer operation is optional. The client lets server know that he needs certain things first, and marks this can be deferred if it takes too long. Basically, it means that if you don't support defer, then you deliver as usual in whatever fits you. It means that, for example, defer directive is kind of optional for execution. If you don't support it, you deliver, you just ignore it and deliver it all. And basically, it means that if the server finds out that a deferred payload is actually immediately available, why not return it? And I think it fits well in what we discuss here, at least for defer, when defer can be ignored by the server, either because it doesn't support it or because deferred fragment is immediately available.
Yeah, I don't want to get too off topic, and what you're saying is related to the next discussion that I have on the agenda. But specifically, if I think that if we say that the server should just ignore the defer directive on subscriptions now, that would mean that clients would not be expecting anything to be deferred when they execute a subscription, and when we change it later, it would be a breaking change, where if it's an error now, then going from an error to a non-error would not be breaking.
But again, why make it required for the server to defer? Again, I'm asking.
Well, it's not required. It's
point.
I mean, you're saying that we changed the I mean, it could be according to the RFC definition, either like must, should, or may. And I think you're proposing may when it's should right now. And we went back and forth on it a lot, and the reason for should was that we don't want servers to like not, the server should like, it should follow it, or it should consider the consequences of not following it. That's what we're saying by should. And if clients like can't rely on the server to do it at all, maybe a server says it supports it, but it just ignores it like 80% of the time, that would be more in line with saying that it may do it. And that could be bad, because then clients could potentially, I mean, developers, not clients, could say, I'm not even going to use defer. I'm going to use multiple payloads, multiple queries in a waterfall fashion instead. And I don't think we'd want to encourage that kind of, yeah. So
I actually think it can work, like in a sense, if like related to next discussion item, but it's related to this one about incremental. If we include entire stream defer chunks in initial incremental, we don't have this problem of like multiplexing at all. We don't need a special validation rule. And it's like client need to handle it anyway, since we discuss it as like viable optimization. So, and it's not something like most of the client will have code for query and mutation that should handle like payloads being in line inside initial incremental and deliver like subsequently. So like in real life, clients will have a code to handle payloads being in one packet and in like multiple packets, and we don't have like this weird validation rule. So what do I think about spec will say stream and defer and subscription allowed, validation rule is the same, but for now everything should be delivered inside first like inside one chunk, inside one response.
effectively meaning ignored. The server can ignore. In
From
subscription.
shape of response will be similar to stream. So data will include only non-stream deferred part, and rest of the stream deferred chunks included in initial incremental. So it's like spec behavior. So it's similar to optimization. We just for now like say for subscription everything will work like that until we figure out how to do increment multiplexing. And I also think for typing and for code generation, it's also better because for data, you will generate the same like types and the same types for incremental. It's like everything is more in line. I actually like it better than forbidding or have a custom validation rules.
Is it still the same issue if to move from subscriptions all inside of the first payload versus breaking it out later, that becomes a breaking change?
No,
like
because it's like because we have this like query mutation, everything can be shipped inside single package and everything can be shipped in multiple package. So it's like, I think it will realistically, people will use stream and defer inquiry and mutation subscription and more oftenly inquiry and mutation. So like they will know that it can be shipped as one response and as multiple responses. It just like happens that until we figure out multiplexing, we ship in one response. Yeah.
Benji, you wanted to?
Yeah. If it seems to me that the multiplexing is the thing that causes the trouble here, and we don't have multiplexing for other situations. So if we agree that when we enable, if and when we enable multiplexing, we do so maybe via an additional argument to stream and defer or something like that, then maybe we can just support it as it currently is without requiring this temporary workaround, which I think is basically aligned with what Ivan is saying. Separately, I was thinking about other situations where we might have this kind of problem. And one is the batched transport that is quite common with Apollo server, for example, where you, rather than sending a single GraphQL request, you send a batch of GraphQL requests in an array. If they have stream and defer inside of them, that would need handling at some point. And it wouldn't just be by returning a longer array of results, which is effectively kind of what we're talking about with the multiplexing of the subscriptions. I think you'd solve that at the transport level by just wrapping each one of them in another array and just feeding it in through that or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but this multiplexing concern does feel like it would also relate to that batch payload response. So I think if and when we solve multiplexing, it won't just apply to subscriptions, but also to things like those batched transports. So yeah, if we can just avoid the problem of multiplexing for now, can we just go ahead with the same behavior for subscriptions as we do for queries and mutations?
Yeah. A problem in that case is like default behavior will always be like if multiplexing is solved by a client, people will want like better performance. So multiplexing enabled but by fixing like current version as default version, we will say that default is not performant, which is bad in long run. I'm rather like, so I agree with Rob in that we should cut it. And since like the whole proposal took so long, yeah, we should cut it. I just like discussing a way to cut it, because I'm like, why I opened like an issue about multiplexing. I think default behavior should be performant, and for like most of the cases, like at least like default behavior should be what you want, what most of the client will want. So I'm like, I'm against like flags. Flags or arguments, or like similar solution. I think multiplexing should be default in long run for subscription.
One of my
batching,
concerns, sorry, carry on, Ivan.
yeah, batching is vendor extension. I will ask like people inside the Apollo what they think about batching and stream defer, but now people implementing stream defer in Apollo, and I don't saw any issue with batching raised. I'm not sure even like how, if this feature is extensively used or not, or just like some features that was added like and nobody using it. I don't know. Like I know for sure it's like it's not a hot topic inside the Apollo, so it's not that important, and it's not specified by spec. Difference in that sense that subscription is specified by spec, but batching is not.
It sounds to me like there's not a clear consensus on this, Rob, even in this relatively small group. Would you like to move on to the next topic you wanted to discuss?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Ivan, open this. I mean, as we were saying, we do say that defer and stream should be the server. If the server encounters defer stream, it should follow it, and that was this other issue I had open. And I'm just going to put in the chat the official definition of should. But yeah, but what Ivan raised is difficulties for clients to understand the response it's getting if the server is ignoring some of the defer directives, but not others. So he is proposing that we allow implementations to fully ignore defer stream, or you either have to ignore all of them or do all of them. Right, did I get that right?
Yes, because like in a case that some stuff in line and some not in line, it's really hard to detect. Basically, either like has next is false or absent. So if it's single payload, you can inline, and we support like older clients. Like for some reason, somebody like wrote different stream directives. Server don't know what stream defer is, but directive is in SDL. So like server just return data without has next. It's legal. It's legal if like caching happens and stuff is cached as single data. But in case if some stuff is in line, and in case if has next is true, meaning it's like incremental delivery, stuff should be easy in increment, like stuff should always be in incremental, either like in a first response or like subsequent response, but always in incremental. We cannot inline stuff inside the data, like some of the stuff. So it's like you can ignore stream defer, you can inline everything in one response and have has next false, but you cannot inline stuff directly in the data and have has next true. So you cannot mix and match, basically. And I show example why it's required, because it's impossible to detect if some stuff is in line or not. Like in this example, like it's possible if we inject type name everywhere, but it's not a requirement to have type name everywhere in spec. And second thing, it's like it's hard for client. And basically, idea for defer is at least like relay idea for defer from a relay. If you have all the data for particular component, you render it shipped. So it's not a question of getting the whole response. The whole idea for defer is that when you have like data to render one component, you actually start rendering. And the whole point of this like thing is to allow clients to detect that more efficiently. So a client can detect if something is delivered or not without like looking into data and checking paths and parsing query.
Yeah, so the nice thing about should is that it's non-committal in a way that if clients like are forced to account for the fact that every defer could potentially be ignored, it would not be a breaking change if we do decide to change it to a must or even a may. But if that's impossible for clients to deal with, then it's not a good solution. But I do think that it's a more general problem of it being hard in GraphQL for type systems to understand how fragments are resolved, and that's I think that was the problem that that the Facebook guys were trying to solve with either is fulfilled or with alias fragments. I think it wouldn't be a problem for clients if we had those. But I mean, but I think we need a solution now. So I'm not sure if we'll...
Yeah, not only fragments. So like first, like Matt said, his proposal is not the one that he recommend one alternative. I want to emphasize that in Matt comment. And second thing, it's not only about fragments and inline fragments. Fragments make it impossible to detect. Without fragments, it's hard to detect. Even if you don't have any fragment or inline fragment in your query, like by allowing people to inline directly in the data and ship subsequent incremental things, it forces client to check paths constantly. And if client get like a lot of data, it's like performance, it's like more code, it's more complexity on the client. So it's not fragment related in my mind. It's like related to ideas that clients, like, I don't want clients to have complicated mechanisms to detect if something was in line or not, because like to detect that, client need to parse query, and it's like problematic It's not maybe not that problematic for Relay because Relay have compiler as a build step, but for other clients it's more problematic.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get consensus here on this issue either, but I'll try to get more discussion on this discussion topic.
Yeah, before we switch, because like in this topic nobody opposed that. I think like everybody who wrote a comment basically supported. Is anyone opposed on this call, or like wants to comment it with like some like potential problems with it?
Yeah, I want to hear specifically from Michael, because I know that he had talked about the related issue in his implementation. So I just want to get his thoughts.
I have a bit of a security concern with it as well. I wonder if these are your only two options. I think many servers would then choose to do what David suggests and put any deferred or stream things directly into the incremental field in that first payload if you've already got the data. The problem with that, I think, is that you can use that to multiply up the data that's actually returned to the client quite easily. So you can imagine having a number of deferred fragments that refer to another fragment inside of them that's a big one, and effectively you then have to generate that many times with the paths for each of them as well. Whereas if you were to just inline that data, the GraphQL deduplication would actually just, you know, squash it all back down to be the same thing. But with the stream and defer, we are explicitly enabling the duplication of these fields, and I think that could be abused.
So in this scenario, server should detect its denial of, oh, first thing, please write a comment, and probably like I have like some question about this, but it's longer discussion. Can you please write like your comment and we continue discussion to move it forward? Or also, if anybody else have any objection to this one, please write it there and I will answer it and participate in discussion.
Should we move on to the next one? Yeah, so we have the has next field on responses that's new with defer and stream, and we're saying that if you're going to be sending multiple responses, you have to have has next true, saying that the next one is coming, and then the last one needs to have has next false to indicate that it's the last payload. Ivan proposed that, so right now the spec for what if there is no defer and stream, what if all the defer and streams are turned off, or the spec says it's not required for GraphQL operations that return a single response map. I even proposed that we should at least more strongly recommend that servers that do implement defer stream put this has next false on all of their responses if there's only going to be a single response. Basically, I think just for a more consistent shape of the response. And I think that is mostly okay. It's just that clients, if a client is going to be interacting with both a server that supports the old spec and a server that supports this new one, it has to make sure that it's not depending on has next always being there. Like it shouldn't write like something like this, where if has next does not equal false, then there's definitely going to be more payloads, because if has next isn't here at all, then you can't, yeah, you'll be stuck waiting for something that's not coming. We did, when we originally were working on has next, it started as the opposite with is final. That's what Facebook uses, and they had a similar type of issue where they had recommended that we invert the meaning, where they wrote some new clients that mostly interacted with the servers, and they were putting is final true on all these on the results of operations that were only giving a single response. And when a client depended on it, then when it connected to an old server that didn't support defer and stream, it wasn't there. So they were hanging a loop. I think it's less likely to happen just because of, I think usually people presume that something not being there means false. Probably the correct code will be written more often than the other one, but I do just want to call it out for this case.
Yeah, and a little bit of motivation why we started this discussion. It's because I wanted in GraphQL, I actually wanted to we have like separate function, experimental incremental execute or something, and I wanted to return has next as false always, to simplify typing and to unify like types for responses. So it started as implementation detail in GraphQL, and we discussed that like everything, if something is done in a reference implementation, it should be at least recommended behavior. If you think it's like deserve to be implemented GraphQL, it should be like recommended for other implementation. Otherwise, it's not reference implementation. This is like motivation for this issue.
To address Benji's comment, can we just never add has next false? That just, the only case where that might be weird is when you have a stream, like right now we support payloads that basically only have has next false, where you had sent the last payload from a stream, but you didn't know it was the last one at the time. The stream closes asynchronously. So is it weird then if we're just sending like an empty object?
I think it looks strange from language point of view to not have has next true ever. Why not? So it means that it will be indicated as an error. If you ever put has next true, server should say that's wrong.
I think if a client never gets a has next false, it only gets has next true, then it should assume that some kind of error happened at the transport level, or the server closed the connection
client,
unexpectedly or something.
I think if we think long run in terms of big picture, idea that we had incremental delivery into spec, and in future, like people will use GraphQL through protocols that support transport protocols that support incremental delivery. So in the long run, like you will always have has next present, either with false or true, and it's to support older version. We will have like option of response not having has next at all, similar to we already have this precedent for extensions inside an error, like spec set you should, if you want to add additional fields, you should use extension. But we understand that there is older client in existence that was written before that. But for all newer implementation, we recommend you to use extensions inside errors. So it's the same here. So like for all new clients all new servers should put has next always. But like a client, if clients want to support older servers, clients should know that response, you can get response without has next. And I can
So
send
it is
the link.
recommended but optional.
Yeah, recommended, but
recommended.
optional to support.
Not to break
support
to support backwards compatibility.
Yeah, and I will send in the chat example of wording that we have in the spec about extensions. I will find the link.
Yeah, basically, I think we'd be changing it from the RFC definition of optional, which is what is currently being described, to recommended. Right.
Yeah, I send link in the chat if you want to check how it previous precedent of similar thing.
And anyone else have any thoughts on this? Is anyone in disagreement with doing this?
I mean, I always seem to be in disagreement of adding more stuff to payloads, and I seem to be in the minority of that because everyone's like, gzip, we'll get rid of it. Nonetheless, I think adding has next false to basically every GraphQL payload seems, other than the ones with has next true, of course, seems unnecessary. It's just extra data for no real value. I think my preference at the moment would be to always omit it, except in the case where you have a payload that has nothing other than the fact that it's the end of the stream.
Agree.
I'm more in gzip camp, but I agree that like now we have like a couple options, and like with your proposal, we at least like have uniformity. We have like one possible way how stuff is sent, because having like in single response, if you have like you can have has next false or you can omit it, and having two options is bad. So I'm like in gzip camp, but if you think, yeah, maybe it's overdue, yeah, for every single response, even small one. Yeah, like I agree that we should cut option and have only one, and if everybody agrees that only one is forbidden, like omitting it, I'm agree with that. And it's backward compatible.
So should we, all right, so should we stick with what we have for now? And we can get some more discussion, or?
Now we have, it's optional. I'm like, what we discussed right now is reversing it, making its opposite, so like forbidding it to have has next at all on single responses. As a person who suggested this thing, I'm joining Benji proposal. So I don't know, maybe like reopen it as totally opposite proposal of forbidding has next on like single response.
And so so we're saying forbidding it in a single response. We're also saying forbidding it in the cases where it's not a single response, but you know that the last response is also going to be the last one.
No, what like if it's non-incremental, if it's single response, either like stuff gets in line, shipped inside the incremental, or query don't have stream defer. It's like you cannot put has next.
Okay.
If it's multiple responses, you can put has next, and it's up to you to decide where to put false and true. And if you can terminate and predict that its last payload, you can put has next false. If you cannot predict that, you can ship like empty object with has next false.
Right. Yeah. Right now, it is mandatory that if it is a multiple response, that all of them has next on it, whether true or false. I think Benji was saying that that's not technically required because if it's the last one and you know it's the last one, then you could still omit it there. But I think that makes that the incremental response shape less reliable, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we discussed like this proposal on a single response result, and now it's allowed in the spec if I like if I'm
it's allowed in the spec right now.
What I'm proposing in supporting Benji proposal is to basically say it's allowed only if response is incremental.
Okay.
And it will solve all my objection, and it will not increase payload size for single responses. So no additional JSON.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we can move on. I agree with what you're saying as well.
Yeah, and Benji posted the same
I see.
thing in. Yeah.
So I think that's it for defer and stream now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. A lot of work still going on there. I see excellent work keeping up the momentum there. Next up, we have Alex with the client-controlled nullability update. Alex.
Yes. Hello. It's been a minute, but I want to get client-controlled nullability moving again. The thing I'm blocked on right now is this discussion thread. I've reached out to some folks at Meta recently to try and get that sorted out. I think the gist of it is that Benji, I believe, and let me know if I'm misrepresenting this, I believe it's also been a minute, so I could be forgetting. Everything between a client controlled nullability, the assertion and a question mark should be non-nullable. And there were some folks at Meta who, for reasons related to relay, although I don't remember if that was the case, thought that shouldn't be, that everything should inherit the schema's nullability, which isn't marked with a client controlled nullability designator. So anyway, I'm working on this stuff. So I'm hoping to see that thread live again soon. Short update. That's all.
Yeah, small comment about that one, and little bit of context. So for a long time, since we started discussing streaming, client control nullability, even in the name of client control nullability, it was nullability control. But when it was like, and I remember it's exactly because when the war started in Ukraine, I actually missed that working group for that reason. Alex suggested like options, and people totally out of blue, waited for try catch scenario, which we almost never discussed before that. And client control nullability took 90-degree turn into becoming try catch inside the query, which totally new semantics, and it's not what we discussed, and it was not a lot of motivational explanation why with 90-degree turn. So I'm like, basically try catch, it's like way more complicated mechanism, and I'm like, I think Benji first raised that in some other discussion, but I'm basically in support of like having strong case why we cannot make it a simple non-nullability. And yeah, that's why I started that thread. And please comment there if you have strong opinion, because it's like stuck. And I think it's like very important for this feature. Without like that discussion, we cannot move forward, because it's like really big difference between try catch and simple nullability example. And inside my comment, I wrote like explanation why I think like nullability is enough, and why it's fit like relay use case, which, as I understand, was primary motivator for that thing. Yeah.
I think the behavior that we landed on, while it was different from a lot of the stuff we discussed earlier, it was something that had been discussed in GitHub threads and whatnot, and it also got discussed quite a bit at the meeting where we voted. I wrote up a decision log about why decisions were made, which is hopefully easier than reading, 1,000 comment, GitHub discussion threads. But so if you're trying to engage in discussion and you're new to
what is decision? Where I can see decision log, because I probably missed that.
I sent it to the Zoom chat.
I think you may have sent the wrong link, Alex.
Oh. I thought clicking the GitHub. There we go. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. It's entirely possible that our reasoning was bad, but I don't think anything about why we went the direction we went has changed. Yeah, I don't know. If people feel like we made a wrong snap decision at that point, then we can look back on that. But you know, ideally we should be responding to the reasons that we made that decision rather than starting from scratch again.
So one interesting thing about this is because it's Relay that wants this and that wants this behavior in particular, Relay is a very smart client. It's a GraphQL service in itself, right? So what the Relay team, I think, have already said, if I'm honest, is that they effectively plan to compile out all the question marks and exclamation points, send the original query to the server, get the result back, and then reapply their own logic there. So I think they can still get the behavior that they want. I mean, originally, I think they'd have been happy with just having the syntax added, so they didn't have to use a directive. So I think that they could still preserve this behavior that they want. The question is, well, first of all, am I correct in that? And I'd have to ask a Relay person to be able to actually judge that. But if I am correct on that, do we actually need to have this same Relay style behavior for everyone else when they don't have the same kind of React error boundaries as Relay has? Or do we just want the simpler solution of literally just changing the nullability and using all of the tooling that we already have, which would be much simpler and less for people to learn? So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think it's weird and funky, and it requires a ton of context, which makes it hard to engage in discussion. But as far as I remember, their position is basically that they would eventually like to use client-controlled nullability. However, due to the behavior around, God, it's been so long. I'm sorry, I don't even use GraphQL at work anymore. Due to the behavior around field merging, they wanted to what's the word for it? They have a proposal out. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The named fragments?
Yeah, fragment merging. Yeah. So they can't use client-controlled nullability because they rely heavily on fragments, which are not isolated at the moment. Because of the way that they merge, client-controlled nullability becomes basically useless. However, they eventually want to use client-controlled nullability once fragment merging is also available. And they believe that eventually clients reach the same conclusions that they have reached. So working around the situation that they're in, they feel makes sense for everyone, even if they are currently going to not use, but like you said, they're going to compile out client-controlled nullability stuff. They also, we talked about, when we were talking about the behavior of the exclamation point, there's the behavior we were going with, which was bubbling, bubble up nulls. And then there's the most popular behavior that they have, which is throw to the nearest error boundary, except that they're using React's error boundaries, so it's different. But we talked about, like, what if for everyone in the spec it's error bubbling, but when they do their thing it's throw, and they're like, we don't want it to be different for people who are using Relay. They thought that would be confusing, but this try catch thing sort of was a compromise between the throwing and the bubbling. I think that's I think that's the summary of how we landed in the place we're at. But yes, we should talk to some relay people. I was hoping that there would be folks here, but is this the first month that we're doing like the split meetings?
It is, yes, but also it's Apollo's Summit conference, so that's probably part of the reason why there's very few people here.
Yeah, cool. Well, I've messaged some people from Meta, and yeah, hopefully I'll get them. I like I said in the comment, I think currently I agree with your position in the thread, Benji. So it's gonna be up to the Meta people to, I guess make a convincing argument for, because I think I don't know. I just find myself agreeing with the last person who spoke, so we'll see. Yeah.
One of the things, trying to think through what the relay team are after exactly, and I'll need to read through the decision log to remind myself fully, so apologies if this doesn't make sense, but I'm actually wondering whether they want the fragments themselves to be the error boundaries. So whether like adding a question mark to a fragment spread is actually more along the lines of the behavior that they desire.
Yeah, we talked about that at whatever conference it was. Oh, GraphQL conf. I don't remember what conclusion we came to. I think I wrote some stuff up, but I don't remember if I did. But yeah, we talked a little bit about that there. I'll try to track down what conclusions we came to, because I think that does make sense. Like that's the closest thing to Relay's behavior.
One thing we can do to accelerate that, we can actually use a new mechanism, accelerate that discussion. If you have time, and if Facebook, assuming Facebook relay team have like time for it, we have a next meeting, European meeting this month, instead of like delaying it 1 month. If you have time, you ping like a relay team, somebody from relay team, and they can show up. We can show up there, have more time for this particular issue, and reach consensus before next working group. And on next working group, we can like stamp on decision and like continue to figure out like small stuff like validation rule and other stuff required for draft 2, for stage 2. So it's a suggestion to make it faster and not wait another like month and have more time for discussion.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. I'll sign up to come to that one too and see if I can get some folks to come. You're going to be at that one, Benji?
Yeah, I will now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really good use of that new meeting. Good idea, Ivan.
Yeah, and I'll please allocate like big chunk of time just in case. Yeah, we'll probably have some discussion, and especially if somebody from relay coming, but it's all dependent on if they have time to show or to join.
Sweet. Sounds good. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Yakov, you've sent me a DM. Please do that via Discord because the chat's going to disappear in just a moment. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you possibly at the next working group, which is on Wednesday, or the working group after that, which is a week on Thursday, 2 weeks today, that is, or again next month. Look forward to seeing you soon. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.